And welcome back to the Financially Simple Experience. Today I want to go over a concept called extreme ownership. Extreme ownership. Now, if you're a reader like me, you might have read the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko, Willink, and Leif Babin. Jocko, Willink, and Leif Babin. Now, I've read tons of books, hundreds of books, if not thousands of books in my lifetime. And this particular book solidified so many concepts for me. You see, I grew up listening to Charlie Tremendous Jones and Zig Ziglar and Les Brown and so many other motivational speakers talking about leadership. I've read the leadership books by John Maxwell and how the effective strengths of leaders, Stephen Covey, so many leadership books. But the way that Jocko and Leif captured simple concept in a way that this red-blooded American could just grab onto and chew it and digest it was powerful to me. It's a book that I typically recommend to so many business owners. And if you've never read the book Extreme Ownership, I highly recommend that you read this. Now, from that book, there are several different concepts, but I want to pull three specific out of the book that we as business owners could capture, that we could implement into our businesses today, right away. We could deploy this tactics, if you will, using military jargon. We could deploy these tactics into our business and have quick and drastic effect. Now, ownership is a key word. Whenever we speak about ownership in today's podcast, we're not talking about the equity owners of the business. We're talking about that every single employee in the company can own their particular job, their particular post, their particular description, their particular outcome. And if every person looks at their position as, I own this position and I only want to provide the highest and best quality of service there, then we can drive forward. Now, in Extreme Ownership, Jocko and Leif, they go through a lot of military exercises, real life stories, where they highlight how extreme ownership works. But put simply, it's this. Extreme ownership is how great leaders take responsibility for every aspect of their team and their mission. Let me say it again. Extreme ownership is how great leaders take responsibility for every aspect of their team and its mission. In order to have extreme ownership, you have to put aside your ego and take absolute responsibility for the outcome. Now, whenever I read that, I said, well, why? Why do we need that? Why do we, if we want to be leaders, why do we have to take absolute responsibility for the outcome? If you're not willing to take responsibility, you will not be respected by the team when you ask it of them. There was an old statement that I heard growing up. My mom said this 1,000 times. I can still see her pointing, she weighs about 100 pounds or so, and I can still see her little crooked finger pointing at me and says, son, what you do speaks so loudly that what you say, I cannot hear. Those words are forever etched in my mind. Maybe you heard it put this way, actions speak louder than words. Now, we've all seen dictatorial style leaders where they say, hey, do as I say, not as I do. But extreme ownership requires us, true leaders, to put aside our ego and take absolute, I love that word, absolute responsibility for the outcome. You see, we don't pass the buck. The buck stops with me. We are willing to accept criticism and we're willing to defer praise. You've heard me say this on the podcast before. I was trained by a very country boy type man. My dad, he barely got out of high school, and I'm not saying that in a derogatory manner. He was wise beyond his years, but he taught us a couple of simple principles. One was, yes, sir, no excuse, sir. My uncle was in the Army, drove Sherman tanks, and he and my dad used to say that to me a lot. Son, it's yes, sir, no excuse, sir. In other words, if you're willing to accept responsibility for something, you only have two answers. Yes, sir, I was able to accomplish it, or no, sir, I was not able to accomplish it. There's only two outcomes. There is not an excuse. That was an extreme ownership concept that my father and my uncle instilled into me early on. Perhaps you have some responsibility or some training in your own life that you can look back on and be grateful for that opportunity and that education, that training that your mentors did in your life. Another thing is that true leaders will take 100% of the blame. and give 100% of the credit away. We spoke about that at length in the leadership section of the podcast back around episode number 90 to 100. We spoke about that leaders have to take responsibility for when things go bad. We have to. It's not pleasant. It's not pleasant, but we must. And then we give our team 100% of the praise. Another thing a true leader does is we look for solutions to create success. Now, we have to define what success is in each of our businesses, which is in of itself kind of struggle. It's hard. It's difficult. But our job is, as leaders, is to look for solutions and ways to create success. We want to then provide an opportunity to mentor and develop those within our purview, within our downlines. We want to give an opportunity to mentor and develop them so that they can be an effective part of the team and enjoy the victory. Leadership is hard. It is. But one of the things that I've noticed is extreme ownership is contagious. It's contagious. When you demand extreme ownership of yourself and you live it openly, you live it without reservation, people will begin to emulate your behaviors. You know, we as a species have this herd mentality. A lot of studies done on that. I've seen lots of videos on herd mentality, how one person goes in one direction and so goes the herd. The reality is as we begin adopting ownership that, hey, the buck stops with us. There are no excuses. Yes or no, sir. We're going to find a way. We're going to dig our way into a success. We're going to find a solution to achieve the outcome. When we put that mindset and we adopt it, then what happens amongst our team is they begin to opt in, or they opt out. There is no middle ground. It places a team in a position to where they're willing to say, yes, I want to move in the same direction as my leader is taking me, or no, I'm not. So then how do we implement? How do we deploy extreme ownership within our team? I want to go over a few different things here that'll help us in this particular move. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to lead by example. Extreme ownership starts with us. I often find it interesting whenever clients engage us that they'll begin pointing downline to, I don't like my employees. I don't like this. I don't like the outcome. I don't like X, Y, Z. And then whenever I boldly state, you're simply getting a reflection of you. You're getting a reflection of the things that you allow to tolerate. You're getting a reflection of the things that you set in motion, not knowing what the results would be. But everything you dislike is your responsibility. I've lost a few clients over that one over the years, but then I've had a few of them challenge me, push me back and say, no, it's not. It's because of them. It's because of X, Y, Z. No. Extreme ownership. If you're going to implement it, it starts with you. You have to lead your team. You have to embrace it and you must exhibit it. You don't look to assign blame. You look for ways that you can improve and simplify the process so that your team can succeed. Let me say that again. If you're going to implement extreme ownership, you don't pass blame. You look for ways that you can improve and ways that you can simplify the processes so that your team can succeed. I actually have a real life story that happened here in the last week. It was pretty amazing. I had a group within our company that let me down. I had given everything for them to succeed, so I thought, outlined a video, had a meeting with them, and they had to meet a deadline, and the deadline was not met. And the person who was ultimately overseeing it messaged me in a very extreme ownership way, and they said, hey, I apologize. I should have done this. This is my fault. I won't let you down in the future. Please forgive me. I, first of all, can acknowledge the fact that, hey, thank you so much for that. I appreciate the way that you're looking at this, but I view it slightly differently. And then I went on to say that I don't view it as you failed. I view it as I failed because we did not have a system in place that would garner you the ability to succeed. Whenever I put that in writing and didn't blame my colleague, but said rather, hey, it's my fault. We should have a system in place and we're going to fix that. That way you have everything within your power to succeed in the future. Whenever I said that, he came back with a wow, exclamation, all bold letters. But then it went amongst his department and his other colleagues in his department came and circled the wagon. They were like, hey, Justin, how can we help us succeed? It wasn't this tit for tat or this blame game. It was, hey, I want to improve and I want to simplify your world so that you can succeed. You see, in that moment, one of the things that I've realized is I'm not perfect. None of us are. Holy cow, I probably made 1,000 mistakes just between the time I got out of bed and brushed my teeth this morning. We all have failures. And for us to be extreme ownership leaders, that we can promote the culture and productivity of progress within our own companies, we have to allow ourselves and our team to recognize us as leaders, our shortcomings. We have to be forthright about that. So we need to implement it amongst our teams. But that brings up a topic here for my second point, and that is there aren't any bad teams. There's only bad leaders. There's no bad teams. There's only bad leaders. Again, I'm pulling topics from a powerful book called Extreme Ownership, written by Jocko, Willink, and Leif Babin. Again, if you've never read the book, I highly recommend you read it. If you want to listen to it on Audible, it is a powerful listen. It will have you on the edge of your seat while you're driving down the road. It is impactful for us as leaders. But with this simple point, there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. We need to come to the term that with great leadership, any team can succeed. Let me say that again. If we have positive and great leaders, any team can succeed. However, bad leaders will cause even the most exceptional teams to fail. I've often quoted SHRM, which is the Society of Human Resource Management, and they found in one of their studies that 84% of workers say poorly trained managers create unnecessary work and stress. Think about that. The same study concluded that 50% of workers believe their own performance would improve if they had better leadership. Now, in the book, you have to read this. There's a story in there about how two SEAL team captains, so as they're going through BUDS, two SEAL team captains of boats. One boat was a dynamic superstar boat. The other one was the last in the class. And what the instructors did was they took the leader from the best boat and put it on the worst boat, and took the leader from the worst boat and put it on the best boat. And within just a very short period of time, the worst boat became number one and the best boat moved to the last. You see, leadership can affect an outcome. And oftentimes, great leaders can change the outcome given various circumstances. Now, we often see it outside the military. We see it in real life. We see it whenever football teams go through trading, when they trade one player for another. What they're trying to do is they're trying to find the chemistry to where they get the right leaders in the right positions to win the Super Bowl or the national championships. Corporations often shift people around. As Jim Collins said in his powerful book, Good to Great, get the right people on the bus and get them in the right seats. What does that mean in practice is we're trying to place leaders where they can use their highest and best use. That's a Dan Sullivan quote from the Strategic Coach. We're trying to find everybody's highest and best use and place them in a position where they can impact those around them for the success of the organization. So if we think about there are no bad teams, only bad leaders, how do we implement that within our company? First thing we're going to do is we're going to meet regularly with our leaders. We're going to meet on a regular basis with our leaders, and we're going to discuss the mission and address the issues which could arise. We're going to try to find what problems will deter us from reaching our goal. See, in each of these meetings, it allows the leadership team to question. It allows them to look at openly challenges, opportunities. But more importantly, what happens is it brings up a couple of other opportunities for us as leaders. Number one, it creates collective thinking. But in order for us to have collective thinking, we have to remember that blame doesn't fix problems. Blame doesn't fix problems. Let's go back to my previous example. Had I gone to that individual who apologized and recognized the misstep that transpired, had I gone to them and blamed and said, I can't believe you did this. And I've seen some people do that. I can't believe you do this. How dare you? This is ridiculous. You should know better. And all those other statements that we've all been guilty of. It doesn't fix the problem. Blame never does. However, in these meetings, as we're challenging each other, we can show that our attitude equals success or failure. In our leadership meetings, as we're implementing this, we're realizing there are no bad teams, only bad leaders. One of the things that you can look for as you begin implementing this in your own company is check yourself, check your attitude, and then look at the attitude amongst the team. You see, I believe this to the core of my person. Your attitude is your choice. It is your choice and yours alone. No one else's. You may have heard me say many times, if you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And that all goes back to attitude. I want to read an excerpt from the book, Extreme Ownership. It's a powerful excerpt. It talks about leadership. And here we go. Leadership is the single greatest factor in any team's performance. Whether a team succeeds or fails is all up to the leader. The leader's attitude sets the tone for the entire team. The leader drives performance or doesn't. And this applies not just to the most senior leader of an overall team, but to junior leaders within the team as well. Think about that. Knowing that your attitude is your choice, and if you think you can or think you can't, you're correct. The power of a leader is undeniable. It's often been said, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And we as leaders, if we're going to have extreme ownership within our company, we cannot tolerate toxicity. We cannot tolerate mission failure. One of the concepts that I can remember our youth leader teaching us, he was in the military in a particular branch, is this concept of cover and move. Cover and move. There's a whole chapter in the book, Extreme Ownership, and whenever I heard my youth leader talking to us about cover and move and applying it to biblical things growing up in this little small church in South Georgia, I really didn't have a concept of what he was talking about. I can remember my uncle talking to me about some concepts of cover and move from his days in the service, and then when I read the book, it all made sense to me. You see, in the military, cover and move means that teammates protect each other. They take turn providing cover fire as they move forward. Think about that. And we've seen this in the movies where they run by each other and pat each other on the shoulder one way or the other. And what they're doing is they're putting rounds down range in order to protect each other. They're covering and moving. The same principle is applicable in our business. If we have small groups working in different areas of the company on various projects, it can divide our company, or it can provide us an opportunity to divide and conquer larger tasks. You see, studies have proven that an active manager can only really handle about 5 to 9 direct reports. That's about it. And so when we're looking at this concept of cover and move, the idea being that each group is one piece of a larger team. You individually are one piece of a group, and the group is one piece of a larger team. And we can support each other's efforts and avoid infighting. How many times as a business owner, let me ask you this, how many times as a business owner have you found yourself asking this question? Will they just grow up? Or maybe you make a statement, they act like my children, talking about your team members. They end up infighting. Well, my project's more important than yours, or my particular role is more important than yours, or I put more work in than anybody else, and all these various things. You see, this concept of cover and move allows your team to unite to a common goal. It allows your group, your leaders within your group, to lead. It allows them to micromanage their efforts and trust with confidence that others are moving in the same direction. See, they've been in the military, they've been trained to protect each other through specific movements. The same can be true in our businesses, friend. We can build trust within our ranks by delegating authority to make tactical decisions. Let me say that again. You can delegate authority to make tactical decisions. I've seen it as of late where many executives or business owners want to be at the epicenter of the business. And I argue against that on a regular basis. If you have to make every single decision within your company, then you don't have a company. You have a job, and that job owns you. Through cover and move, through training to a central mission, one mission we're trying to accomplish, and you get all the teams facing that mission, each carrying their own weight, it allows you to release. It allows you to delegate. It allows you to trust the decisions of your team members. And as you trust the decisions of your team members, what you are doing is imparting the ability for them to take extreme ownership in their circumstances. See, you're decentralizing command as a military term, or as I say it, you're removing yourself from the epicenter of the business, which is what you want. So now how do we deploy, cover, and move within our business? Number one, we want to clearly define our goal. What is it that every area of the company is moving toward? This is why whenever we do strategic planning, we say there are 3 key objectives for this year. One's financial, 2 are not. What are those 3 key objectives? What that does is that destroys siloing. That destroys departments from operating in their own vacuum. It destroys that. It allows every department to know clearly what is happening and how they're moving to the common goal. So that's the first thing, is you have to have a clear goal. Once you've communicated the clear vision, then you have to have shared accountability. Shared accountability. Accountability is tough. It's tough. Oftentimes with accountability, we deal with legacy issues. We deal with revenue decisions. We deal with egos. We deal with a number of things. Some could have a positive or a negative impact on our company based on the decisions that we might have to make as leaders. Shared accountability allows a peer pressuring effect and allows those who excel to truly excel, and it will put the spotlight, or the heat gun, if you will, on those who are not carrying the same weight. It'll opt them out. In buds, it would cause them to ring the bell. In the old workout days, it would cause us to tap out, say, Coach, I can't handle this anymore. That's what shared accountability does. But it's important that you have a leader that sets the tone. That sets the tone. I was just reading a book called The CEO Does 3 Things. And inside that book, one of the 3 things is culture, sets the cultural tone. Right now in our own company, we're going over this concept of cultural revolution. In every business, if we're not careful, we can lose sight of what got us to where we're at and what truly are our values. And ultimately, in order to create extreme ownership, we have to set the tone so that the departments will share, so that we'll pull together and face the common enemy or the common goal. And finally, great leaders, if we're talking about extreme ownership, great leaders make hard decisions. Early in my life, I had an instructor who was a military brass. Back when I was homeschooled, Mom hired people to teach us, and this particular instructor had some brass on his lapel from the military. And he made this statement to me one time that I've never forgotten. He said, son, collect all the information that you need, delay the decision as long as possible, make a decision, and don't look back. Think about that. If we just deployed that in our own company, knowing that we have to make hard decisions, sometimes daily, sometimes on a minute's notice, sometimes out of the blue, sometimes we can make them tactically. There is nothing more important than the mission. What are we seeking to achieve? Knowing that we have to collect as much data as possible, we have to be willing to listen using empathy. We have to be able to listen to what's happening on the ground, what's happening around us, so that we can achieve the overarching mission, our overarching goal. What is it we're seeking to achieve? If a department is struggling, then we must first look at leadership. Why is this department struggling? You must assess whether the group within that is being led effectively. If not, you have to replace. That's a hard decision. It's a hard decision. Sometimes as you're making decisions and you're talking about replacing people, there could be legal contracts involved. There could be where you're going to have to continue to pay for a certain period of time even after that employee is gone. You may have some attrition. You may have some retention issues as you make these hard decisions. But you're going to have to listen. And you're going to have to keep your ear to the ground and see, is the company being led effectively? And if not, make the change quickly. Make the change quickly. As a leader, you're going to have to make difficult and unpopular decisions. Oh, we've all done that. And if we're honest and truthful, many times we know decisions that we need to make, but we just don't want to deal with the outcome. As a true leader with extreme ownership, we have to make the tough decisions. Knowing that the mission, the success that we want to achieve is the mindset. You can separate your emotions from your decision-making process. It's a skill that we all must learn. As leaders, we have to remove ourselves from the emotions, but we have to make decisions to achieve the goal. As we look at what one of my colleagues calls mission critical or the highest priority, there are decisions that, candidly, more than likely, you're putting off right now. There are decisions right now that you know you should make, but you don't want to wrestle with them. When will you make that decision? Friends, extreme ownership is about leadership. It's about taking control of our business for a positive or a decided outcome. And in order to do that, we have to go through a number of different things. Number one, we have to recognize that there's no bad teams, only bad leaders. I genuinely believe that everybody, as a consensus, as a majority, wakes up in the morning to do their best, the best that they know how to do, the best within their abilities. And it's up to leaders to bring the very best out of people, just like that coach that maybe you had, that I had, that would just bring out our very best, push us, and we wanted to choke them at times. But when we got back, we won the championship, and we're like, man, that was the greatest teacher, the greatest coach I've ever had in my life. And they pushed on us. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders. We must recognize that. Number two is we must cover and move. We must protect each other, and we must work in alignment to fully drive us forward. And finally, number three, we're going to have to make some hard decisions. Friends, as leaders, we have the honor and privilege to drive our teams to success, however you define that. It's not a duty. It's not a burden. It's not a job. It's really a calling. My challenge to you is, if you've never read the book, Extreme Ownership, I challenge you to read it. If you have read the book and now you're trying to drive some ownership within your own company, maybe it's time to recognize where you're at and to make some hard decisions. This is tough, but it's a calling. Friends, I realize life is hard. It is. Life is good, though, and we're greatly blessed. Y'all go out and make it a great day.